When Elon Musk was a kid, he decided to hitchhike into outer space. He did it in his imagination through thought. Kind of hard to take action on that when you're a kid. However, years later, he did, took action. And the impact we see now. I was reading Walter Isaacson's biography of him. Real biographer, really good at it, by the way. Way to go, Walter. I am not finished, maybe page 100 and something. The story about Tesla, maybe I don't remember. The story about Tesla putting it on a Lancia chassis, and at the end of the day, kind of like maybe running out of money and looking at it and saying, I can't put my name on this and sell it for 70 grand. It looks like crap because of the way automobiles are manufactured. And I followed those pathways. Not going to work for what I want to create. Can't. And of course, everyone's no. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? It's not going to work. No, we're going to start over. We learned a lot. Now we're going to start over. Well, now we have a Tesla. The pathway into an original life requires a decision, and that decision comes from something that happened that's already there that you know about when you're about 5 or 7 years old. You have that too. So does everyone. That's how we work. That's how human beings function. Now, at a certain point, there is friction. Doing something new in the world is resisted by people who are impacted in the new thing you're doing. First, in their thought. When you say it, their beliefs now, without them being aware of it, are triggered. What are they going to do? Hey, thanks for telling me. Doesn't typically happen for most people, particularly when what you're doing, when you take action, will have an impact on them, particularly related to money, power, and control over things. They don't like that. The impact, however, long term, must be thought through. Creating closed loop systems is a problem from the perspective of a world economy that's trying to open up to elevate and expand itself with multiple people plugging in and out of whatever that infrastructure is in a way that works for everyone, where everybody makes money. I don't know how you do that when the pumps say Tesla on it. That's just me. And that's what I'm going to talk about, which is how to shift your experience, which is about making a decision. Elon Musk's decision was, I'm going to create a closed loop system related to energy in all domains of life. And I'm going to Mars. I'm going to outer space, like I thought about when I read Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's his decision. There's an impact of that on the society without question. Big one. The pathway into an original life requires a decision. Always. Who decides? He did. I do. You do. Your mentor, your coach, your parents, your friends, your networking group, your mastermind council, your CEO peers, whatever you're doing, your business networking, let's support each other crowd, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. That's all good. Who makes the decision about what your original life will be? You, and no one else. No one else. Consider a pathway to freedom, satisfaction, and happiness without compromising anything. And what it will take for you to leap onto that pathway and off whatever road you're on, where you're falling into a lot of potholes that you don't want to be in. There's a difference between potholes and walls. Walls are good. Potholes are not so good if you keep falling into them. I discovered through my own experience over years of bootstrapped entrepreneur experiments leading towards getting what I wanted, which was a life where nobody could tell me what to do. I made my own money and I didn't have to answer to investors or anybody else, but I could live on my own terms. The resources to do that were already available to me without me realizing that that feeling of, oh my God, I'm going to run out of money, or oh no, this didn't go as well as I thought 4 years later, or whatever, or thank God I invested in the markets back in my 20s so I have enough IRA money to pay the bills and not have to go back to a business providing services to people that I don't want to serve. I want them to get what they want, but I don't want to be part of it. I had to make that decision myself. Hard decision, but easy when you hit a wall. Why do we need a wall? We need a wall. I needed a wall to wake up. The wall woke me up. It's always has. There's always been a wall. What is the wall? It's friction in the atmosphere. When the rocket comes back to Earth, that's the hard part. Getting there, I've read, is not as hard. They figure out how to get. They use calculus and other math. I learned calculus. It's another story. They know how to get there. Getting people back alive is harder. Getting the equipment back is harder, from what I understand. I'm no rocket scientist. It's a rocket engineer. I learned from Elon on a podcast. He was so irritated. Somebody's like, rocket scientist. He's like, it's not a rocket scientist. That's a different job. It's an engineer. I loved that. Language is important. Facts are important. Knowing what you're talking about is important. Not knowing what you're talking about is confusing and has an impact on the world and other people who may think you know what you're doing when you don't. I had to decide to be my own mentor, coach, and support function myself because I got so confused over listening to so many people in the coaching industry and other industries saying so many things online that didn't make any sense to me. And I had to tune out all that noise and stop taking anybody's advice and feedback and form my own direction and go my own way. The wall. I hit the wall. February of 2023, when I closed my school community, integrated with Zoom rooms for a company that I founded called Solopreneur Inc. that no longer exists. Thank God. It was a important and necessary stage on the process of learning how to go to my version of Mars. It started when I was 7. I can remember back further than that, but I remember because there's a story. So I was 7, and my mother tells us this story. She's like, "You took off." Like, what do you mean? I remember now, though. It triggered it. And I was like 7 years old. Maybe I was 5 or 6 because she doesn't always remember the details. I don't either. I have trouble remembering facts and dates and details. That's why I'm obsessed with it. I just write it down and I say, eventually I'll get there. Remembering data is not my strong suit. However, I remember concepts, feelings, and ideas immediately. And this one was simple. How do I get out of this family and go somewhere else? There was nothing wrong with my family, and there was nothing wrong with me. This is what happens when you think in your own way. And all of a sudden at 7, there's this realization of, I don't like those ideas. I don't understand them, and I got to get away from them because I'm going to lose myself in these opinions that are now being projected onto me as beliefs and convictions about how I should think and live. And I'm 7 years old, and I'm like, I don't want any part of this. So I grew up in north of Chicago. So it snowed a lot back then before all the global warming happened. It snowed a lot. It was great. I mean, real snow. We jump off the roof, 2-story house. We jump off the roof. And it's like, I packed a suitcase and I took off in January. I didn't get very far. I think my mother and father were like, "Where are you going?" I said, "I don't know, but I can't live here anymore." Are you going to bring food? I don't need any food. Well, I took action to go to Mars. My thought was right. How do I become an original in a society that's forcing me into a mold? Is that my parents' fault? I don't think so. It is what it is. Consider this pathway to freedom, satisfaction, and happiness without apologies or explanations. Outside of your inner circle of family, friends, and advisors that you form as a peer group. Consider that. There's 3 components that I'm going to talk about this week. And it's all about decision. What is the life experience I want, and how do I shift it? You can figure this out in a week. You don't need 5 years of coaching. First, leap, don't run into my ideal experience. Leap. Now, defining leap becomes important. Leap means, oh, there's a pool there and there's a deep end. Let me go head first and see what happens. Oh, there's no water in it. Ow. Now, I know other people aren't going to do that. They're going to walk around the pool for a while and they're going to dip their toe in the water and say, oh, that's cold. And then they're going to worry about it and they're going to talk about it a lot. And then eventually they're going to get in. What's right? What works for you is right. Second, create your own private board of directors mentor panel. The board of directors mentor panel, for me, worked. Still does. What is a board of directors? There's 3 ways to think about it. 1, people that you recognize know what they're doing. Be careful. To get to the board of directors mentor panel, I had to opt out of the society for at least a year and just turn it off as much as possible. Now, everyone's a little different in this. The concrete board of directors approach are people that are out there putting content out somehow. Just make sure they know what they're talking about. Second approach is people who resonate with you, really resonate. There's an interconnection of resonance in you in relation to them. And you feel like, They get it. Pick 3 of those people and follow them every day and ignore everybody else, except your inner circle as you form it. Third way, channeling. This is what I do. I do both, but channeling is energetically connecting into this collective intelligence consciousness. And that's the best way because that's what's happening anyways. Whether you're aware of that or not is part of where you are in your own awareness of consciousness. It doesn't matter. You don't need to get to that. It happens automatically. What matters is creating your private board of directors mentor panel so good information's coming in and not confusion. The more confusion I allow into me, the more confused I remain. Third, get to the heart of what's going on with your life and business, the heart of it. I call this inner truth inquiry. Everyone's got their own names for these things, but they're all the same if it's right, because they're culturally appropriate. That's what's important. It's important to find something culturally appropriate so it resonates and you don't have to wade through a ton of confusing language that comes from someone else's culture. To get to the heart, what is the shore versus the raft? The shore is I got to get to the heart of what's real in my life and my business. The inner truth inquiry approach is how you do that. What's real and what's not real is a requirement to make a good decision. I've used many systems, many rafts to get to the shore. One, I'll give you an example just to make this more concrete for some people who don't know what I'm talking about. One is called Buddhism, and Buddhism is a great raft. And my experience of Buddhism was very powerful and very profound, and then very confusing. And then I let it go. And I thought, I don't need this anymore. Thank you. And I appreciate it. Uh, the people who created it, thank you. I appreciate you and what you brought to the world as a cultural tradition. I think you should get 10%. I think anybody who uses Buddhism should give 10% to the Buddhist people who created it. Where does that money go? The office of the Dalai Lama would be a good place. In he knows a lot about it. He knows a lot about it. And he knows enough now to not talk about it anymore. Because he uses it. 10% seems fair. Amazon takes 40% of my self-published book. The banks take a lot more. How do you get 10% to the Dalai Lama? I don't know. That's beyond my pay grade. Somebody's going to figure that out, though, because it needs to happen. Confusion came when I stuck with it. And I did it this morning. I picked up the Diamond Sutra. I'm like, I got to go to the bathroom before. I've been so much Buddhism in my head. I'm like, uh, and I love it. So I'm reading it and I'm like, it's too confusing now. I don't need it anymore. And that's when I thought of this. I thought, oh, okay, that's their culture. It's not confusing to them. And I thought about the difference between me reading the Diamond. I remember when I first understood the Diamond Sutra. It was like 2 years ago, and I was on a walk with my dogs misbehaving because I wasn't paying attention to the dog, which I've learned now is one of the tenets of Buddhism, which is be present. I wasn't present. I'm learning Buddhism, and I understand it. So I'm like, oh my God, I get the diamonds. I was so excited. And I came back and I wrote my journal. I understand the Diamond Sutra. I got there. Meanwhile, the dog is a disaster, pulling on the lead. How did I get Buddhism used to make Buddhism useful for me? was not to get my mind excited about something I was never going to master or become an expert in, because I don't want to spend my life studying Buddhism. People have already done that, and I don't like staying in one domain. I'm a free ranger. So I'm not going to become an expert in Buddhism. Why would I keep going? I used it. How did I do it? Noah Rasheta. Thanks, Noah. Secular Buddhism podcast. I listened to every single episode for a year. Who else? Stephen Batchelor and Martine Batchelor. And I forget their two colleagues. There were four of them. I watched that whole damn program. And then I took it, I printed it out. It's in that drawer right there. And I created a YouTube playlist for a channel that YouTube canceled for no reason over a year ago, and then popped back up without explanation last month, I think. They decided, for some reason, in their infinite AI wisdom, which I think made the decision that I was doing something wrong. Now, this is not the Larry Call YouTube channel. This is the Red Pill Pathway YouTube channel. It's back up, and I'm like, whatever, I don't care. I'm not even going back to it. I'm just going to leave it there. I'm not putting anything up on it anymore. Just the Larry Call one. And it was great because I was able, with their help, it's reimagining, rethinking the Noble Eightfold Path for a modern life experience outside the temple. How'd they get to that? How do they know how to do that? They spent a lot of time in the temple. Martine has a great story where she's like, I'm cleaning house. She's cleaning houses for a living. A brilliant person is cleaning houses for a living. Happily, I'm sure, because she's learning how to clean houses. And she was talking about it. I'm like, oh my God, I had that experience too. How do I organize myself? That's the lesson. I get it. Fantastic learning from those people. For me, now I don't need it anymore. I worked through it. Good tool, raft to get to the shore, whatever's useful. For me, because my mind is very complex, because I'm a modern person that grew up in the West, so I think too much. It's not helpful to go down that road too long, because I'm going to spin in circles forever trying to figure it out when there's nothing to figure out. It's a thing you do. I learned that from Jack Cornfield. This was 3 years ago, I think. January. I did it again. So when I'm 7 years old, I took off. This time I didn't take off. I'm happy where I live, but it was January, and I'm doing a walk, because I did a walk at 5 a.m. every day for a few years. January, I'm going every day. I don't care. I was like Michael Jordan with basketball. I'm like, I don't care how much it hurts. I'm going. And I'm listening to Jack Cornfield, and he's telling a story about being in the jungles of Southeast Asia with Ajahn Chah, I think his name is, teaching him. And he's like, it's a great story. And he's like, I forget the podcast name, but he's like, I'm dying of malaria. He thinks. And Ajahn Chah comes into the hut and says, how's it going? And he said, I think I'm dying. He said, you'll be fine. Keep going. Well done. And left. That's how it works. It's a phase. It doesn't last forever. Thank God. That was a big moment, collapsing into the pain of feeling like I have to learn how this all works, and I can't. And then all of a sudden, what happened? I hit the wall, and I allowed it to happen. And that's what happened to him. And he talks about it so other people can get value out of it. That's what he's doing. Does he need a marketing department? No, he doesn't. It gets in the way. The result of doing this work, the inner work, and the outer work, it's all the same, ties together, is clarity. This is an overview about how to shift your experience to get clarity, full clarity, to get what you want this year. Now, not when you get there. Now, today, in this moment because that's all you got. Start with clarity and watch those doors open. They open wide. When they open, open. Does it ever close again? No. Do you go to another door that's closed? Yes. Does that ever end? No. At least for me, it hasn't. I think it ends never. We have a math symbol. It's an 8 turned on its side. Infinity. Does it ever end? No. Learn how to succeed with clarity on your own terms, and you'll get the life you want. It is that simple. What is stage one? First week, decide on your direction. What's coming this week? We're going to talk about leap, don't run, as opposed to forcing results, figuring things out, and allowing your mind to run the show and confuse you constantly. Then we're going to talk about how to create your own private board of directors panel. And third, how to get to the heart of what's going on with your life and your business in a political environment. So on Friday, I'll talk about politics because it's important. Politics and religion are important. It can't be off the table. It's everything. I learned about politics when I was at Circle Campus, downtown Chicago, after I went to junior college, long story, and then I got into GW, which probably wouldn't happen today. George Washington University in DC. It wouldn't happen today. They wouldn't have let me in today. But back then, they let me in. The miracle. Because I got A's at Circle. After junior college, I worked my way up. Commuter school, downtown Chicago, run by the University of Illinois system. And I took a course on foreign policy. And it was like foreign policy 302. What did you do? What did I do? I just took courses that looked interesting. I didn't know I was supposed to organize it. Nobody told me. So it was good at the end. Like I had cellular biology, and then I had it didn't make any sense. It made perfect sense to me, not to them. But no one told me I couldn't do it that way. We paid the money. And this guy, he's like 80 years old, and he comes out and he says, Chicago isn't ready for reform. And I think some guy raised his hand. He says, is this foreign policy 302? He said, it is. And the guy's looking down. He's like, I'm in the right room? He said, you're in the right room. I think he was thinking, I don't know. I don't remember all the details, but he's thinking, I need this for I'm on a track. Foreign policy. I got to graduate with some foreign policy degree. And he's like, it is. We read a book by a guy named, I think, Morgenthau, Politics Among Nations. And this guy was unbelievable, this teacher. I had no idea what was going on. No idea. Now I get it. Tenured professor. And he explained to us how Chicago works. Is there any difference between power politics on the global stage from Politics Among Nations, which is how nations fight with each other, and what was going on in Chicago that he knew at the ward level, the committeemen, the aldermen, the dictator named Daley, and then Daley Jr., another dictator, and everything else related to it. And he's like, Chicago's not ready for reform. And he explained why and how it worked. That was a great educational experience for me that I'll never forget because I understand the principles of how power politics work globally and always. And I got to learn how Chicago works. There was a long period there where I thought that was bad. I'm like, what is wrong with this university system? How can they let that happen? I don't think that way about him. As far as the system goes, that's a whole nother conversation, which I won't have because I'm not an expert in it. All I can do is talk about my own experience, which was at GW. There was a guy who taught perceptual psychology who was also in his 80s based on a book he wrote, I think in the 1950s, that was wrong. It wasn't even close, but it was his little narrow understanding of how perception works, and nobody went to class after the first week. It was obvious. It's like, "You don't have to go to this class. What's on the test? Here's what's on the test." "Okay, good." I didn't go back. I think I got a C minus, which was about right. Uh, and I did it all at the last minute because it was stupid, and it wasn't real, it wasn't true, but they made me do it. See you tomorrow if you wanna